most everyone has a copy of a statement that we made, and Dr. Hills is on there as well, and President Pershing. So you'll have that in your documents. And I wanted to do something, some thoughts that I had last night and this morning, maybe a little bit more on a personal note. And forgive me if I have to read a few of the things off the page, and then I'd like to open it up for questions. And then, as we usually do, we'll talk a little bit about University of Colorado, and then we'll talk about Oregon, which is the norm here at 10:15 on Monday morning. So, first off, I need to remind everybody that I'm a basketball coach, and my responsibility is the welfare of our basketball players, our basketball program, and that's always going to be first and foremost moving forward. I really respect this rivalry. I think if you go back in time, the 5 games that I've been involved with, anybody will be able to read, listen, radio, TV, newsprint, that I've always been a big fan of rivalries. That's probably one of my favorite parts about college sports. I also believe that I would not be doing my job in the description that it's given to me for the well-being of our players and our program if I didn't have reason to pause and concern about the nature of some of the recent games. The other element is, if you look at the big picture, I have a job for the basketball program. I think it's a small division of this great university. And if you look around, there's a lot of us. There's hundreds of different areas, different departments and factions. And I think the leader of each of those has a great deal of passion for what they need to stand up for. And I feel really lucky, really fortunate, grateful that my particular area, I feel, is in harm's way. And I understand the 100 years, the history. And if I didn't raise that concern with my immediate boss, Dr. Hill, and consequently President Pershing, I don't think I'd be doing my job. And so I think it's important, because there is a lot of passion within the university. I want everybody to know how thankful I am that my bosses support me and understand that, and have trust that what I've seen and what the arena that I've been in and what I've experienced specifically through the last 4 years is very heightened, and it's dangerous. So it's with that we've moved forward. Once again, I want to reiterate that I'm a basketball coach. That's my description. I love my job. I love the university. A lot of passion for it. And it's important that people need to understand, if you really reflect on it, we're talking about a game. We're talking about a 40-minute game. We're also talking about some differences now with the landscape of conference realignment and so forth. So with that, not going to hide from anything. Throw out a few questions for anybody to fire away.
Larry, did you think about other alternatives to canceling the game?
It's not really. I got to the point, I think, and this isn't any one event. This is a pattern, as you read in the statement that I created. It's kind of the old adage, fool me once, fool me twice, fool me 3 times, and at some point it's my fault. It was after a couple days, after our latest game, when I really started to reflect on it, think about it, measure it all up, that I raised my concerns. But I don't know what the alternative would be. We have talked about trying to do some type of tournament within the state. There's some great basketball programs in the state, as you're aware. Doing something maybe at, I don't even know what it's called now, the Vivint Smart Home Arena. It's been the Delta Center as far as I know, but where it can happen. I just think it's become pretty toxic, pretty venomous when you get into somebody's home arena, and you're only doing that once a year now. So it's kind of like playing Colorado. It's almost worth double, as opposed to the days when we were in the same conference. I've never been in the same conference as BYU. I've never experienced that, but I do understand the rivalry. But no, to answer your question, I don't know what the solution would be short of, as I've stated, a cooling off period.
Because it looks somewhat suspicious that you waited until after a home game to do it.
Well, that's what I'm talking about with a pattern. I don't know. I don't know if 2 years ago I felt there was a really rough play that was never called to anybody's attention. But if we would have went to the monitors, we probably would have had a flagrant 2 when one of our players was actually blocked out probably harder than I've ever seen anybody block somebody out. So it wasn't something that was really magnified and anybody understood. But I'll tell you, after I watched our game from 2 years ago, it was kind of disgusting to me to see the play. And then when I watched the BYU game from 2 years ago before we played them again this year, it reminded me of kind of how nasty that play was. And it's really, I guess, with lack of a better term, would be the straw that broke the camel's back when this year's episode took place, where I feel like it's kind of escalated each year. So to answer your question, no.
Larry, perception is reality, and a lot of people have come up to us and said, this just doesn't seem like Kraskowiak because he never backed down when he was playing from a challenge, from physical play. You would take care of it otherwise, whether that's more physical play or doing stuff on the court like boxing out a little stronger and all that. So how do you react to this doesn't seem like a Larry Kraskowiak move?
Well, I'd like to think that, number one, Larry Kraskowiak never threw a punch that wasn't provoked. I've been in a couple fights that I regret. I really do. I played 10 years. There's a little bit more of a scrapbook there if you want to go back in time. I don't think anybody would ever describe me as a dirty player. I'm not describing BYU as dirty players. I'm saying the nature of the rivalry kind of elevates everybody's emotions. So maybe that's a little bit more problematic. I think if you know me, I'm not interested in backing down. That's probably been one of my shortfalls, kind of the eye for the eye mentality. But do you see my dilemma as a basketball coach if you're kind of made up that way and you're put in this environment? There's part of this that I'm actually protecting myself from myself. And I don't know exactly how I would come across with our players in the week leading up to the BYU game, maybe with a little bit of the toxin and the venom that I have inside of me. It puts me in a little bit of a quandary. So, I don't have any problem what people think, and I know what I know. I know what I feel, and I also know that I'm in charge of a bunch of young men right now, and I need to talk about discipline and self-control, and I'm not a player anymore. Back when I played, it was a little different. You've seen 30 for 30 with the bad boys. I mean, every team needed to have a couple hockey thugs like myself in order to survive. I used to have a job that for about 3 or 4 years that all I did was stand up above the illegal defense line, and I needed to learn every official's name. And when my man went below the illegal defense spot, I would, hey, Wally, he's illegal. So I didn't play a whole lot of offense, but I was playing defense underneath that line for a lot of years, and it involved a little physicality. So that's where it's a little bit of a dilemma. It's a little bit problematic from my side, and that's even part of the reason I almost got carried away this year when it took place. I don't need to look foolish. I don't want my players to see me looking foolish, but that is my nature. So hopefully that answers that.
What would make you think, Larry, that a year off would change all this?
I'm not sure it will. I'm not saying a year off is going to change it. I just know what I can control is that we're not going to play. I'm hopeful that it can. I visited with the president on Saturday. He's visited with the president of BYU. Would you agree with me that something's broken? That there's a little hitch in our giddy up when it comes to this and some of the stuff that goes on? Maybe we need some education with our athletes. Maybe there's some interaction through the years. Just weird things happen. So I'm not sure that a year off is going to solve it. All I know is that I don't want to put ourselves in that situation a year from now. And again, that's kind of my mentality: is you can control what you can control, and that's all I'm really looking to do.
That compounding everything for you was what you considered to be a lack of remorse. I
knew you were going to mention that. Gooner, I knew that was.
You
coming
put it in
from
the
your
statement.
mouth. You're right, I did. Lack
know-
of remorse.
Well, what did you hear from Coach Rose or Nick Emery after the most recent game?
No. No, Coach Rose actually, when we were kind of shaking hands in a stunned state when the game was over, did apologize, said, "I'm sorry about that." And I said, "You know what, Coach? This game seems to be bringing out a lot of this." That was my comment to him. That was when it first hit me that, man, some crazy things are happening. And I'm not saying that anybody's cheap or dirty. I'm just saying it's when things are that heightened and elevated, some things happen. I mean, I do know that when mistakes are made, maybe a punch is thrown. I don't know that things need to be said to the player that's laying on the ground afterward. Now, I tried to put myself in that position and said, man, if I smacked the guy unprovoked, I'm pretty sure I would probably like put myself in timeout pretty quick. Like go, oh man, that wasn't, rather than walking over top of him and telling him something that I don't need to share. And that's when I got on the court also, because I'm allowed to be on the court, and I asked somebody what in the world they're thinking, and I was told to go to my bench by a student athlete. So to me, it's like, it's kind of hard to swallow. That was in the days after when I started to reflect on it. It's one thing to make that physical mistake, and it's another, and to me, it's a lack of remorse. And no, I've never heard, as far as a phone call or anything like that from anybody, neither had Brandon. So that was part of my thinking as I was in this cooling down process.